Okay, so this is the chain rule formula for derivatives for whenever there's a function that has another function inside it, or what you can call it a compound function. So let's say you have f of x and there's another function inside of it, g of x. To take the derivative of it, you need to take the derivative of the outside function, which is f of x, with still g of x inside of it, and then multiply that entire thing with the inner function, which is g of x, or the derivative of the inner function. So the formula is the derivative of f of g of x equals f prime of g of x times g prime of x. And prime just means derivative. So f prime of x means derivative of f of x, and g prime of x is derivative of g of x. Okay, so the first problem gives us f of x equals x squared plus 1 cubed, and we need to find f prime of x, so we need to find the derivative. So the method I like to use is separating the outside function and the inner function. In this, we see that the inner function is just x squared plus 1. So let's just say a equals x squared plus 1. And now this whole thing is being cubed. So the outer function, let's just say y equals a cubed, because a is the inner function and y is the outer. So you take the entire inner function and cube it, because that's what the outer function is. And now we need to find the derivative of the inner and the outer function. So y prime, which is just the derivative of y, is just going to be 3a squared from the power rule. Bring down the 3 and then subtract the exponent by 1. And the derivative of a prime, is just going to be 2x. Again, power rule. And 1, is since it's a constant, it's just going to be 0. So 2x. Now we have to plug in a into the derivative of y prime and multiply it by this from the formula. So now we can just write 3 times a, which we saw is x squared plus 1, just the inner function. And now, since it's squared, because we reduced the exponent by 1, and now we multiply everything by a prime, which is just 2x. So the final answer, f prime of x equals 3 times 2x, 6x, times x squared plus 1 squared. Now you can expand this whole thing and simplify a little bit, but you don't have to, because at least you know what that real value of the function is. So you can just keep it at this. And this is the answer. Okay, so our next question is f of x equals root x squared minus 1, and find f prime of x. So this time, our inner function, or this time we're also going to use the chain rule again, because we say that the inside function is x squared minus 1. And this entire thing is being square rooted, so to the power of 1/2. So we can just say that a equals x squared minus 1 and y equals square root a. And now to find the derivative of a, we can just go here. Square root a is really just a to the 1 over 2. And now we can just use the power rule. So we can bring the 1 over 2 down and subtract by 1. So we have negative 1 over 2. And once you simplify this, you'll get 1 over 2 square root a. Now this is y prime. So y prime equals 1 over 2 square root a. And now a prime is just going to be 2x, because with the power rule of x squared, 2 times x, and then 2 minus 1 is just 1. So 2x, and negative 1 is just a constant, so it's 0. And now we have to multiply again. So we'll end up having 1 over 2 square root, and then the square root is x squared minus 1. And all of this is being multiplied by 2x. So these 2's get canceled off, because that's there on the numerator and denominator. So we'll just end up having f prime of x equals x over square root x squared minus 1. And that's the final answer. Okay, so question 3, we have f of x equals negative 7 over 2x minus 3 squared. And we have to find f prime prime of x. So we have to find the derivative. And you see this is a fraction. So you might think we need to use a quotient rule, but that would create unnecessary steps that you don't need. What you can do is just separate this. So you know that -7 is multiplied by this whole thing, because you can split this into -7 times 1 over 2x minus 3 squared. And this just turns out to be -7 times 2x minus 3 to the power -2, because it's in the denominator, so -2. And now we can just ignore the -7 for now and just work with 2x minus 3 to the -2. So let's just set our inner and outer function. Let's say a is 2x minus 3, which is what is inside. And y, let's once again ignore the -7 and just say that the outer function is a to the power -2. And now y prime is -2 to the power, or -2a to the power -3. And a prime is just going to be 2, because 2x just becomes 2, and -3 is a constant, so it just becomes 0. And now we can use a chain rule. So we have -2 multiplied by a, which is 2x minus 3. And this is to the power -3. And this is multiplied by the derivative of the inner function, which is a prime, so 2. Now, we have this, but just remember, this is only of this, without -7. So now we have to multiply this whole thing by -7. So, when you simplify everything, this becomes f prime of x equals -2 times -7 is 14, and then 14 times 2 is 28, divided by 2x minus 3 to the power 3. Because this is -3, so everything goes in the denominator. So this is our final answer. So technically you could have done the quotient rule, but then you'd have to do a quotient rule, then the chain rule again, and then simplify again. But here we can just skip to the chain rule and then ignore -7. Okay, question 4 says f of x equals 1 over 3x squared plus 4, and find f prime of x. So this is similar to the last one we just did. We don't need to do the quotient rule at all. This time, we don't need to separate anything either. We can just straight up say this is equal to 3x squared plus 4 to the power -1. And now, this looks a lot easier to handle. So we have our inner function, which is a, and a is equal to 3x squared plus 4. And y, which is our outer function, is just going to be a to the power -1. And y prime is just going to be, using power rule, negative a to the power -2, because -1. And now a prime is just going to be 6x, because when you bring down 2 and multiply by 3, it's going to be 6, and 2 minus 1 is just 1. And 4 is also a constant, so it's 0, so we just have 6x. And now let's put it into the chain rule. We have negative a, which is 3x squared plus 4, and this is to the power -2, and this is all multiplied by 6x. So now when we put this into the denominator, we'll end up having f prime of x equals -6x all over 3x squared plus 4 to the power 2, because we brought it down so the negative goes away, and this becomes our final answer. -6x over 3x squared plus 4 whole squared.